Good morning, Africa. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Akwa Ibom State. Beautiful morning it is. And this is Rise and Shine, but beaming live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. I am the IMM. Good morning and thanks for joining us.
And I am Frank. Is it good to have you join us? It's already the third week of December, and of course, by the time we get to the weekend, we'll be getting ready to eat rice and stew for Christmas, for those of us who love rice and stew. So it's a wonderful Monday morning to be here, and of course, counting down the number of days, 17 days already, or 16 days already.
16 days now to the end of the year.
You know, that leaves us with just 15 days left for the year to be over. Yeah, good morning. How was your weekend?
My weekend, I'm trying to draw a thought. It was busy. It was productive. It was a good weekend. Yeah.
Okay, so busy, productive. That means those expectations of credit alerts must have come in.
Wow, amen. Productivity and business. I don't know if it's tantamount to credit alert, but amen.
Yeah,
Get there.
definitely. When you're productive, I mean, it should come with some.
I could have been productive at home.
Some dollars. Come on, hobby. Can say, oh, wifey, you've done.
Thanks.
You've done so
Wow.
much.
So
just,
credit.
just take this and get something for yourself.
I get that.
Either ways,
I
you
see
can work.
that. I see where you're going with that. But it's all good. Quite a number of things happened over the weekend. Rumors also were part of the things that made it over the weekend. But it's good to know that we can quell some of those things, especially in these days of fake news, flying up and down. But I won't even credit what fake news it was. I can't even go there. But I was alarmed when I saw it in the media space. I was like, okay, like, what's this about? But, it's Monday morning. Today is the 16th of December 2024. Like we said, 16 more days. 16 more days, yeah. And then the year 2024 is done and dusted. We start having conversations about 2025. But Francis, quite a number of things to look at. I think the key conversation this morning is the fact that finally ECOWAS has permitted Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso to secede from the ECOWAS. Although there's some clauses there, but they have literally acknowledged their request to leave the bloc, and I think that's a really, really major story.
Well, I would say no surprise. It's something that I've long expected it to happen. Remember when the ECOWAS leadership said, oh, look, we are not giving up, we're still leaving open a window of opportunity for these three countries, Mali, Niger, Republic, to join and get back to the bloc. I said it was not going to happen. If it were just a matter of military coups and no fundamental issues raised, then you would have said, okay, that is possible. But when very deep-rooted fundamental issues that borders on even the reason why ECOWAS was formed in the first place by the founding fathers from the region, it's definitely going to take a lot more than just promises or leaving the windows of opportunities, to rejoin open. It's going to be a matter of, it was going to take a matter of dealing with the institutional decay, the diversion, that led to the three countries deciding to break away and form their own alliance, as compared to staying with the regional bloc, regardless of whatever misunderstanding they may have had with the union, and then of course their country's democracy, which is no longer in existence as we speak. So it was long expected. Now it's finally happened. We'll watch and see the extended 6 months period. I mean, their tenure by reason of their later is supposed to end by 2025 January, and after that, so you have like 6 months. So you're looking at the month of July to be the last month through which we can see whether or not these individuals would decide to come back or pull out completely. And then ECOWAS will also have the opportunity to take some of the things that are resident within these countries that belongs to the body out of it. So it was long expected.
Well, long expected several reactions, but that's a story we are going to dig on, later this morning. But there's several other key, issues that we have lined up on the show this morning, and just to see how Nigeria continues to progress, especially having the fact that our president is the one sitting on the board as chairman of ECOWAS. So that is, all of this happening quite it becomes quite descriptive of him as the chairman of that particular bloc. But Francis, a lot more stories.
Well, there's a lot happening for Nigeria. I think the conversation about Shekarau's comment also comes into play, where he said the hashtag End Bad Governance protest was also a clear message to the person of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The issue of road within the South-South zone has been spoken to by the likes of Adrian Clark, who has called on the president to declare state of emergency on the South-South roads. And I believe that would go deeply into the East-West road conversation that has, consistently been overlooked in some quarters, in some states, while in some states you have it, happening as expected or within the specification. Of course, you're also looking at the board meets our conversation, which is consistently trending, especially as we see that the Yuletide season, people are planning to, travel in their numbers. And then there is also, the NDLEA intercepting 3.3 billion meth and large shipments in auto parts, all the way from Canada coming into Nigeria. So there are a lot, and if we have to go straight to the political scene, we've seen the Rabiu Kwankwaso, Donald Duke of Rivers State or Cross River State, met with the former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, in the company of other, stalwarts within the political space. And that has also generated a lot of reactions. It's literally like Baba is making a move to, form an allegiance of some sort from different individuals across political parties to maybe boost the conversation for a major between Peter Obi, Rabiu Kwankwaso, and Atiku Abubakar and the rest of them. But these are all developments that within the political space, it's just going to take a long time for us to actually see what this conversation, what this closed-doors meeting, would result in.
Well, we're going to see what all of these, closed door meetings like Francis talked about, is going to result to. What are the expectations as we go forward into the coming year? Well, we'll take a quick breather, and when we return, we're going to be digging story after story and seeing what is available for us on the show this morning. We also encourage you to be a part of the conversation. So follow us across all our social media platforms, all of which you can find at spectrumtvlive.ng this morning. Also remember that we have our phone lines where you can partake in the conversation through calls or through WhatsApp messages. We're going to have a bumper ride this morning, and in a moment, join us again. Stay with us.
Rise and shine. Rise and shine. Rise and shine. rise and shine.
Welcome back and thanks for staying tuned. Of course, we promise to delve right into the conversations that we have for you on the show this Monday morning. But I think just before we get to our interview, which is already on standby, one good news that we can share. I remember that a couple of months ago, maybe 2 months back, we're talking about the fact that ECOWAS, that Nigeria as the leading bloc, as the leading nation on the bloc was owing, several levies of the ECOWAS. But it's good to know that, the Nigerian side of things as regards ECOWAS, they have actually been able to pay off, all of the levies and whatever fees that they were owing in ECOWAS. I think that that's a good thing that we can add to the feathers of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on his time as president, as chairman of the ECOWAS.
Well, it's only logical that he is going to try and redeem his image and that of the country by virtue of him being the chairman of the ECOWAS. That's on one end. The levies have been long overdue. You're looking at over 19 years of Nigeria not paying. And then, of course, you're also going to have to worry about what this would mean if leadership is done by example. It goes a long way to speak to the powers within the union, to do the same thing. And it's commendable, I must say, for the president to take that bold step of clearing all the debt, one end. The second thing would be for the president to justify the payment by also taking other actions. Remember, there are a lot of court rulings from the ECOWAS court as far as Nigeria is concerned that we have not adhered to. So yes, the money has been paid, but that's just one end to show strength in leadership, to show character in leadership, to show accountability in leadership, But then, if we had to show all of that, clearly there's a need for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to also ensure that Nigeria as a country obeys all of the rulings that has been given by the ECOWAS court, and not just the ECOWAS court. The government of Nigeria commits to, the rule of law and leads by example. That is clearly what is going to change the narrative. But it's commendable. I know that some Nigerians have asked, where did we get that kind of money to
Big
pay?
question.
In a situation
like
this,
a 19-year-old backlog, and then you do it all at once.
We're looking at 55 or thereabout million US dollars. That's a huge amount of money.
That's a huge amount of money. It just goes to tell you that, first of all, there is money in the system. We just decide to use it and do whatever. And you can also argue that, okay, no, that we don't have as much money, but we just gave priority to this. And you also have to calculate the time in which the president decided to do this. They were coming to his nation for the 66th annual, meeting of the ECOWAS, and man just looks good timing. Let's pay this up. At the end of the day, there is a political undertone in all of this that, is being done by the president, holding the 66th ordinary session of the ECOWAS meeting at the Aso Rock Villa and clearing about 85 billion naira, as backlog on our ECOWAS levies. Big deal, big move at this time by the president, but serious things. Let's quickly swipe to our NLC conversation this morning.
Well, we have the NLC chairman in Akwa Ibom State, Comrade Sonny James, joining us live for this conversation virtually, of course. And we'll be looking into the new minimum wage conversation over the course of the weekend. Of course, there was a press release issued by the NLC, but before we go into the details of that press release, let's welcome on board the NLC chairman, Comrade Sonny James. Good morning. Welcome to Rise and Shine.
Good morning, and good morning, Akwa Ibom people.
Good to have you on the show, Comrade. How has it been, being on the side of responsibility, especially NLC conversations on minimum wage? We are closing in on the Christmas, and you are our leader, sir.
Yeah, for me, is a calling. For me, it's an assignment by God. For me, working for the people is joy, because that is the whole essence of creation, that we should all ensure that we contribute to one another positively in every passing day. So for us to lead from the front in a time like this, we are very happy and we give God all the glory.
Okay, well done. We know that you had pushed a serious conversation with the governor, Pastor Governor Moino, looking at the time where NLC at the federal level gave a 1st of December ultimatum, asking that state governments come on board with effecting the new minimum wage. And you were able to draw out a conversation and an MOU from the governor, who said 80,000 is going to be paid from this month of December salary, and the backlog will be paid in February, noting from November 1st. How is the workforce in Akwa Ibom State taking all of these deliverables that has been brought by the NLC in Akwa Ibom?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the issue of the minimum wage, as enshrined in the Nigerian Constitution, negotiated at the federal, transmitted to the state, has become the right of all workers. Because even in developed world, you are aware that there will be this wage mechanism that is set up nationally. And therefore, Nigeria cannot see to be exemption to this international mechanism. But here in Akwa Ibom State, you are also aware that this will be the first time we will be having elements of disagreement and of the nature that we have. But in the first instance, we give God the glory that we have a governor who on his own graciously said, out of the minimum wage, I will pay 80 above the minimum wage of the federal in Akwa Ibom State. That the federal, for whatever we care, is that if you look at the actual pronouncement of 70,000 and look at the consequentials that was later negotiated, it amounted to 77,500. If you divide 930,000 naira by 12, for per annum by 12, you will have 77,500. So that becomes the minimum wage of the country at the moment. The 70,000 was the announcement, the consequential took it to 77,500. For us in Akwa Ibom, we had the announcement of His Excellency at 80,000. The consequentials may also as well take it above that too, which all of us have look at it and ensure that we are within the limit of whatever was approved to us. Agreement was reached, like you have rightly said, after exhaustively working on the issues outlined in the terms of reference for the committee. And we worked assiduously to ensure that we had those agreements reached. You also realize that it wasn't reached without some form of resistance. When we had gone all the way down to achieving all the issues discussed in agreement form, but there was no date of commencement. The date of commencement is what necessitated the NLC to issue the first letter of ultimatum or intention to proceed on strike if we don't have the date of commencement inserted into it. So that is also that was a serious concern to organized labor, and fortunately for all of us, there was this intervention of His Excellency the Governor by saying that he will give the commencement date from December and he will pay the 13 months to workers, as he had earlier promised. But the position of the organized labor was that it has to be October. In the process of give and take, we have to now recite at 1st November, and then the agreement was signed with the intention that it will also be paid in the new wage in the month of December. However, His Excellency had also further directed that the verification exercise must be seen to be completed. Whereas the understanding of the agreement was that it has to be on side by side. Let the verification be ongoing while the minimum wage also is paid in December, as directed by the NLC. But in his concern, he said he's going to pay in the month of January or as soon as verification is concerned, is concluded. Our worry had always been, if you look at the first schedule of the federation, it was naturally supposed to end on the 21st of January. So if we follow that schedule, it means that minimum wage will not be paid in the month of January. That caused noticed so much panic and fear amongst the ranks and file of the workers. And then we insisted the second schedule was now brought up, and then the federation, as of today, is intended to finish on the 13th of January. But the meeting, when His Excellency had now had this, the Carol night, had also announced to the waiting public that he will insist that the federation should be concluded before the new minimum wage is paid, in order to weed out those who may not be collecting that the wage. But we said for us in the NLC or in the organized level, it would have been proper if all these discussions were now further convened by the minimum wage committee, which has not been dissolved as of today, because they still have some work to pay until the minimum wage is paid. That committee is not dissolved. We have not finished our work at the moment. So he would have passed through that comment or his position, considering also that we have our own position to share on the table. But he rather choose to discuss with the NLC in the Carol night. Of course, we have nothing about that. We're not nothing against that. But we also have to release our own circular to the public that while he made the announcement, NLC had no consultation or contribution to whatever was done, and that is the heart of His Excellency the Governor. So with his pronouncement and insistence that we can go on strike and go on protest, while we are not afraid of that, we decided to have an enlarged meeting of the NLC, TUC, and the unit. But when you use the word enlarged meeting, it's not a statutory member of the Executive Council, which is the chairman and secretary of Industrial Union of NLC and TUC. You have to go down to the unit at the ministry level, ministry by ministry level. So where that one would have failed, we would have gone down to what we call the mass gathering of workers, where all the workers from their ranks and file would have gathered in one position to take a final position on the matter. But on this one, on the fateful Saturday, we were able to have workers look side by side on their position we find ourselves, and then the position of the government on the matter, being at opposite situations. When the meeting at this moment, not really that of the leadership alone, they said, okay, since the withdrawn 13 months has been restored by His Excellency on his own, as he promised earlier, that we can give a consideration for the month of December only, with the fact of getting the old salary and the minimum wage for the people of Akwa Ibom State, considering the festivities that is already at hand, so that can go a long way to also enhance the purchasing power of workers. But to say the least, the new minimum wage is still preferred till tomorrow by the leadership of the organized level. That if the minimum wage is paid as agreed, no worker we can say for free in Akwa Ibom will have anything less than 40,000 as addition. But in the issue of the 13 months with the old salary, everybody understands that level 1 to level 6, I doubt if anybody has 20,000 as basic salary. And 20,000 can barely buy a bottle of granola oil in this season. But in the consideration on the wisdom of the workers, it's okay, we can stand it down. But the reason for standing that down must be that we must compress the verification exercise to finish on or before the 5th of January, so that the outcome of it, we can now present it to the government and ensure that the January salary is not delayed for any reason and is paid on the premise of the new minimum wage. Recall that His Excellency the Governor said, even if it is given to me tomorrow, I'll pay. And therefore, we are going to work assiduously as directed by the meeting to ensure that we finish the verification with a view to getting January salary in the new minimum wage with arrears of November, and then February salary with the arrears of December of the new minimum wage.
So we have a concern, comrades, we have a concern with this arrears payment, because the minimum wage was stamped by the president in July, and with the communique that was released, plus and minus, expectations were that the payments will start reflecting from September of this year. But it now looks like we're having conversations and getting concessions for our state governors, where we have said, for instance, in Akwa Ibom, from November is where we now expect the state government to, pay a backlog, pay the arrears. So now for Akwa Ibom will now be November and December, then fresh payment in January. Are there reasons why NLC, in various states, using Akwa Ibom for an example now, why they're shifting grounds? Why couldn't we argue for the September, to get the backlog and arrears from September?
This issue of arrears from September is a Nigeria problem. It's a governor's problem because they have the governors forum where they discuss on how they will inflict pains on Nigerians. That is just the truth about it. And like I said, even the November 1st agreement in Akwa Ibom said did not come without a struggle. It was not given on the platter of gold. It was only on the basis of the struggle that the government accepted the November and withdraw the 13 months. So you can see that as a gift in the November phase, it was given in the consideration of the fact that if you insist on getting in November, I will not give you the 13 months any longer. So you can see that all the governors are in agreement to ensure that the Minimum Wage Act in Nigeria is frustrated. A very few of them comply with the acts, and I can say for free that Delta State and Lagos State takes our congratulations for beginning in the month of September, like you said. But you also look around Bayelsa, Rivers, look around all of us here, you see that there's a different meeting going on also to bring it back to December. The governor of Akwa Ibom State insisted that it would start its own in December. I would not want to say that there are also not some states that started in December too. That is also the truth about it. But however, without any form of defense to the state government, it is very clear that Akwa Ibom State, for all I know, and the organized labor is aware, we need not be in the worst case scenario. Akwa Ibom State has no business to be in the class of Zamfara State, who did not even implement the former wage properly. Akwa Ibom State has no business to be in the class of Abia State and Ebonyi State, whose contentions are still there on the implementation of 2020 minimum wage. And therefore, if we are now finding ourselves in that class, it's rather unfortunate. But we have done our best as the organized labor. That's why we took the matter out to the enlarged meeting for others to also realize what we have also gone through. This also cannot happen without some element of the fifth columnist that is also operating and acting amongst us. However, those ones are not concerned because if workers decide, irrespective of who is standing, it's going to be like a moving train. But we have to also bring the matter and give further to it and let the enlarged workers give consideration to it. And that's what happened. And for me, I hold no blame on anybody. I hold no blame on myself because the workers that earns the money and the workers that is going to also go to the market have also said, for the purposes of peace at this genotype, let us take what is being offered while we wait for January to ensure that we get the new wage.
Okay. Now, as highly commendable as that is, I like to come from a different perspective. Now there's been an enlarged meeting. You've issued a communique, a release, and this has gone to the government. What happened in the event that the government is not able to compress the verification date into the time frame that would allow for the salary to be paid in January? Are we going to be seeing a massive industrial action?
For all I care and know very, very well, the meeting considered that exhaustively and directed the committee on verification to do is the needful by compressing the days of activity to ensure that weekends, Saturdays are included to finish on time. So I am very certain that all reasonable thinking people should do the needful to ensure that that is concluded. This is now generating concern only at the state level. The primary school teachers that is controlled by SUBEC, about 11,800 of them, and the local government workers also about 11,000. DIAS is going to be concluded this week. So DIAS is going to be concluded this week. So if DIAS is concluded, we are not going to talk about the state workers. So state workers have no reason not to compress their timetable and ensure that it is concluded. But where we discovered that we have done our own part and there's a foul play, we are also equally ready to confront the situation as we enter the new year. That's the truth about it.
Okay, now the new year also, talking about the new year conversation, concerns would abound that, okay, the year 2024 has been a remarkable engagement between the organized labor and the Akwa Ibom state government. We've had our own ups and downs in terms of the relationship, but seemingly we can say, yes, the governor is a listening governor, and labor on its own has consistently championed, you know, the rights and the welfare of Akwa Ibom workers. Going into 2025, what are the expectations in terms of workers' welfare? And I'm asking that question to take our mind back to the issue of palliative, the promised CNG buses to help transportation. Recall last week we had a permutation that there might likely be a price hike in premium motor spirit and other petroleum products because of, you know, an in-house crisis within IBMAN in Akwa Ibom State, which at this moment is yet to be resolved. So what are the projections for 2025?
Yeah, whoever is alive and whoever is leading is needful that he requires to give the best to the people that he leads. And it will be the pleasure of the organized labor in Akwa Ibom State to get things done in the right manner. For me, apart from the issue of this minimum wage that we are having these back and forth discussions, we have always had a good relationship with the governor of Akwa Ibom State, who has graciously on his own, even some of them without so much agitation, desire to look into the welfare packages of the people. I give it to him on the area of resuming the payment of gratuities to the former workers of Akwa Ibom State and other incentives. However, it is very certain that whatever was not done, we have still had room to compile our requests, and we are still working on them side by side. It is very hopeful that the new year will give us that which is required of us. The governor on his own, I can say for free, that he's been trying his best on the side of payment of the expectations from the organized labor and that of the workers. We are also very certain that it will keep the faith going in the manner that to which it had done in year 2024. And if that is maintained, we can say for free that there may be no need for very serious agitations. You recall that what the organized labor is doing now is what was frequently done during former administrations, because when you do not want to listen to labor issues, then you have made a great mistake. And therefore, the governor from the campaigns, he came to the labor secretariat. We presented some of these requests to him, including these payment of gratuities and other entitlements, which he graciously accepted to do, and he has kept faith to it. And therefore, we are also very optimistic that whatever is left is going to be handled. Why we seem to be saying all this is that for anybody to accept it or leave it, why we say it's a civil service thing. No company is working here, nothing is happening here. And therefore, if that is the only company we have, the workers need to be treated properly, because if you go to the market, go to the market when salaries are not paid, you will be very, very shocked that nothing is happening in that market, because they will all be complaining that salaries are not paid. So that shows that that state is a civil service state. And therefore, what is the right of the workers given to them will now translate to the traders, the artisans, the welders, and all the likes. And therefore, we are expected that whatever is the worker is given to them, the money will keep circulating to other local and mediums economy. So that is why we said most of this should be done, and the excellence are good faith. Let's hope that it will continue. It is until it is derailed that we can say otherwise. For now, we expect that 2025 will be better than 2024. After all, the income of the state has kept on appreciating. I have never seen, for any point since I started growing up in Nigeria, where 1.7 trillion was shared as distribution to federal, state, and local government. Mm-hmm. The highest I had in 2023 was about 700 billion naira. Look at 2024 November, 1 billion was added to 700 billion. It goes a long way to say that none of the state government has any excuse to give its citizens not to live to the obligation of the standard obligation required of them because of the enhanced revenue that has entered the state.
So before I let you go, two key questions that I want to, lump in one. the place of, the NLC where this minimum wage conversation is concerned with the private sector, because now we are pushing the implementation conversation, but it looks like those who work in the private sector is a no-go area. What's the hope of implementation? And two, you have, talked about the fact that Akwa Ibom is a civil service state, spread that across Nigeria to a large extent. How are we looking to improve the productivity of the civil service now that we also see that, the federal government has tried a little bit to increase what their take-home is? How do we make sure that the civil service is more productive in such a way that they can even generate way more revenue? So two things: implementation and conversations for minimum wage in the private space, and then productivity in the civil service.
Those are two important but germane questions. If you look at the minimum wage committee at the federal level, composition of the committee, you will see that a representative of the employers in Nigeria were very conspicuous. They were very active in discussions, and they were also part of the agreement. And therefore, it is expected that everyone working in the private sector should engage their respective employers, just like we are engaging our state governors. And then the NLC will always be on hand to ensure that we join force with all those people working there to speak with their management to ensure that the right thing is done, and the workers are also made to be part of the minimum wage, since their representative, the representative of the employers, were part of the minimum wage agreement. So as the federal government has finished their own, put it to rest. Right now we are struggling at the state. Very soon we will put it to rest. We are very certain that those ones from the private sector will also resume. But it is expected that those leaders at the private sector organizations should be the one to initiate the processes with their respective managers and management. Where it seems to drop fit and there is need for you to invite the organized labor, we will always be there to remind your employers that they were part of the agreement, and that is supposed to be a national wage for the country. So nobody has any excuse not to implement national wage for everybody working in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. On the side of productivity, yeah, it is always the concern of every sane leader to ensure that to whom much is given, much is expected. That workers take responsibility of ensuring that they deliver on the mandate of the employers, and in this case, the government of Akwa Ibom State, who have given you the job, and you accepted with the terms that you will discharge your work creditably enough, and then you live with the tenet of the terms of that agreement. Don't also forget, when you are talking about generation, workers are always on hand to provide their services in the terms of revenue generation. It is always now left for those who need to give the job to them to arrange the job for the workers to do. And let me see any worker who said he will not do his work. I have not seen one, and I'm very certain that they will also have a way of reciprocating this gesture of government. But it is the government that will provide the work, and the workers will be willing to do the work. Not because you have given us 70,000 naira, you will also come to create what is not within the context of the job that was assigned to the person. And you think because this is work, you must do this because we needed work. It has to all be within the relationship of the context of the agreement, the terms of employment, and that which is stated in the external laws of Nigeria. If that is the case, I can assure you for free that Akwa Ibom workers to whom I am aware will continue to deliver on their mandate and then serve the people and serve the state creditably in view of the money that they have also received. While the government is encouraged to continue to do the needful and then continue to service both the workers and citizens and to ensure that the right thing is done for the people. And then they are the ones that people will say thank you. They will not, nobody will remember all this stress that some of us seem to go through. They will always sing praises and carry green leaves on the street for whoever is at the ends of affair. In this case, Pastor Moino for Akwa Ibom State.
All right then. It's been a great conversation with Comrade Sonny James, who is the NLC chairman for Akwa Ibom State. Great expectations. We'll keep tabs to see what the state government does come January with regards to beginning the payment of the minimum wage. Thank you so much for all you do for the organized labor in Akwa Ibom State.
Thank you, and always my pleasure.
All right. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Well, like he said, compromise is key. in implementing, the minimum wage conversations, bearing in mind that the Kwara State governor is paying a 13th month salary, although he has said it doesn't it doesn't bear so much light beside paying what the new minimum wage should be. But on that premise, they have given him some leverage to start payment in January as opposed to December that was, earlier agreed upon. But yes, we'll be pushing on the Monday morning conversation today, and a lot is happening. Let's look into the 66th annual ECOWAS meeting that was held in Abuja with our president presiding over. We have our guests joining us in a moment, live and set, and we'll be digging around all of the pros and cons of what's going on in the ECOWAS. Stay with us. Welcome back and thanks for staying tuned. Of course, it's a full house this morning, and we have Citizen Matthew O'Connor joining us to have this conversation, a really serious regional conversation, I must say. Over the weekend, we had President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who is the chairman of the ECOWAS blog, hosting 11 of his counterparts at the Aso Rock Villa, of course, for the 66th, meeting of the ECOWAS, as it were. Several questions to be asked. Remember, this is amid rising tension on this particular corridor, where we've had Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali actually putting a letter to withdraw from the ECOWAS bloc. The question is, on the heel of this particular meeting that was had, what are the expectations? Because key take home from the 66th biannual meeting that was had is the fact that the ECOWAS has sanctioned the withdrawal of these three nations from the bloc. So we're going to be looking into the details and what this means for us as a continent. Good morning, Citizen Martha O'Connor. Good to have you on the show this morning.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. Yeah.
Good morning.
Yeah. Thank you, my brother Francis.
I'd like to ask, how was your weekend? Because you're looking,
Relaxed.
Relaxed and fresh.
Well, I hardly have weekends. And we just work to see how we can add value to society. So.
Well, serious conversation. So let's take your mind back and take some of your reactions to the ECOWAS meeting that was just had. It's I'll call it a really decisive time for the bloc, especially looking at the key reasons why these three nations have asked to secede from the bloc, especially with regards to the fact that they were no longer following with the tenets of the founding fathers. Some of the reasons why ECOWAS was brought about in the first place, these three nations have accused ECOWAS of working away from that, hence their request to actually leave. So holistically, it's been a long time coming. So what's your reaction to this?
Well, my reaction is that ECOWAS was created in 1975, and it was actually a Nigerian leader that played the most critical role in bringing up a regional body. And by 2025, ECOWAS is going to be 50 years. Looking at what they were supposed to have achieved, I am finding it very embarrassing that there seems to be nothing that ECOWAS has achieved in the last 49 years, almost 50 years. What were the key areas that we're looking at? Regional integration, trade, ease of movement. ECOWAS wasn't to have a boundary. Members of ECOWAS states were supposed to be moving freely. In terms of security, they were supposed to have addressed that to be sure that the entire ECOWAS region is safe. But fast forward to where we are now, like some persons will ask, how did we get here? We got here with the same problem that is bedeviling the component states of ECOWAS. Initially, there were 16 of them. And some persons have even forgotten because now we talk about 15 ECOWAS states. ECOWAS had 16 countries. And one of them, Mauritania, that it is an Arab country, they opted out, making them 15. Because of poor governance, because of insecurity, and because of the pressure from the colonial master, one particular colonial master, who was in charge of the Francophone countries, specifically France, the countries that France had domineering effect on. At the end of their reign, they still continue with policies that made those countries 100% dependent on their former, that was still current colonial master. So a number of things wasn't going well, and military struck Mali, Burkina Faso, and then Niger, which is just, in fact, there's almost no boundary between Niger and Nigeria. And remember, one of our former presidents, Buhari, was saying that if he doesn't feel comfortable in Nigeria, he moved to Niger because that's where his kith and kins are. But what happened in Niger changed everything about the perspective and going forward, if truly there's a bloc that can be called ECOWAS. Because as soon as Mr. President Tinubu came into office, ECOWAS made him the chairman. While even his case was still in court. And unfortunately, this development that happened, the coup in Niger, brought out the angle that was never ever perceived that it could happen. And what was that? President Tinubu wrote to the National Assembly in August. There was a coup, I think July 26, 2023.
2023.
And without mincing words, without waste of time, the directive was restore the former president back to power, otherwise we are coming for you. And they pronounced economic sanctions instantly, and then the appeal to the National Assembly to approve for military action. And there was mobilization already. And because the people of Niger saw the coup as a guardian coup, there's something called guardian coup, where a people that were trapped are to be rescued by whatever action that will alter the governance structure. The people in Niger were very happy that there was a coup, and the man that was dancing too much to the tune of Niger was eased out, and they were going to have a breath of fresh air. So between Niger and even Nigerians, particularly northerners, who most of them, they don't have a country. They are there, so they wake up in Niger, come to work in Nigeria, or go to sleep in Niger, and all of that. They said if there is a military intervention in Niger, it's going to affect the north adversely. So the northern Nigerians were against it, and National Assembly, under the Swiss Senator Gospel Akpabio, rejected the request by Mr. President. And by this time, the three countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, they were not sleeping. They now came together and said, we are going to defend ourselves. So the long and short of everything is that Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, unfortunately, very unfortunately, took a decision which even he and other heads of state of ECOWAS could not go beyond that very threat. And by this time, there was power cut. There were economic sanctions already. And what did that do to the coupists? They thought outside the box. And in fact, I call it thinking without the box. And they started making moves that improved their economy. And they looked for a new partner who Ireland they have found in Russia. So France were completely sent out of Niger, and I think the other Francophone countries. The number of things is not what it used to be. And when you juxtapose that with the fact that our president has a bond with France, he has been to France virtually more than every other country. So it became a very big problem. What do? France has lost where they get mineral resources from. They used to get it so cheaply. But now we get to know that Russia is paying more for what France used to get at peanut. So they are much more together, and they have formed their own bloc. They have their own bloc, just three of them, which means ECOWAS has now reduced from 16 to 15, and now to 12. And we cannot call it ECOWAS any longer. So the first thing they have to do, because the time frame given to these three countries to come back is just a face-saving thing. Those people have said their decision is irreversible. And if that is irreversible, ECOWAS does not exist again. A new name will have to be sought such that the rest of West Africa can move forward with possibly three different blocks. Mauritania belongs to, I think, Arab League. Then these three other Francophone countries, they have their own bloc, and then the rest 12. But all said and done, it is a pointer that Africans are unable to provide leadership, even at the micro level of a West African setting. It is an indictment, and I read through what our president said, his achievements in the last 1 year, and you wonder if, for me, I was wondering, am I okay? You cannot talk about regional integration. You cannot bring the success cannot be pointed out that this is a clear achievement, but things are written and they are read. And I'm sure maybe people must have clapped. Those are the kind of things that we must guard against. And in going forward, I'm not comfortable at the silence of community leaders. Community leaders, as every country have vocal spokespersons who are not in government, who should be able to come together to say, over this issue, this is what we can do. But I want to commend even the 3 Francophone countries. They have said that having to do with movement between countries, they don't have any issue. Any West African or ECOWAS member can move through their countries and still do business without visa. That is a plus to them because we have over 400 people, 400 million West Africans having to, traverse the various countries. So they have a smart thinker among them who has said, don't stop other West African member citizens from coming around. That is a very big plus to them. And so far, I have not seen what I can put my finger on to say, this very box, the surviving 12 ECOWAS countries have done something wonderful. For instance, the president of Senegal, who is the chairman of the mediation committee, I can't say what he has done. I cannot.
Well, there's serious, conversations and more serious worries that will come out of this. One key issue that these 3 nations brought on the table was the fact that ECOWAS has not been able to address the issue of neo-colonialism. We have moved out of, the governance of our colonial masters, but there is the new era where these persons are still present. They're still trying to run our economies, sell the future shirt. So that's a problem. And so neocolonialism is one of the key reasons why these 3 nations have asked to secede from the ECOWAS. But on the heel of that, where you've talked about that, they are also permitting ECOWAS nations to still be able to travel through their nation and do businesses. Yes. But we also have to remember that, these 3 nations have introduced a new biometric passport, which is without the ECOWAS stamp on it. So when you want to go to these 3 nations, you are going to need this new biometric passport, which does not cover ECOWAS. Are we really sure that, traversing as ECOWAS members is still going to be as easy? One thing is to say it when they come for the 66 ordinary session. The second thing is to make sure that, there are implementation strategies at the borders. But talk about neocolonialism, which is still a major problem. You cited the fact that these 3 nations have pushed out France out of their shores, but it looks like Nigeria is beginning its own embrace. Yeah.
That's the key word, because for the first time, Mr. President went on what could be called a state visit. He's always in France. I don't know if there's a month or 2 months, or anytime he travels, even if he goes to US or goes to London, that he will not go to France, either unofficially or whatever. But he went to France on a state visit. And he made a statement using the same term you have just used, that it's time for France to embrace Nigeria. And what is that area? It has to do with the solid mineral exploitation. And you know that Macron had been under severe attack from French citizens who, some of them have said clearly that his reign, his tenure, is going to turn the children of France to slaves in Africa, because France cannot actually do without resources from Africa. They can't. Virtually 80–85% of whatever those Francophone countries earn are stored in the CBN, Central Bank of France. And when they want to get part of the money for investment, they get it as loan. In fact, this is something you need to really look at, how France has continued to enslave their former colonies. And so when Mr. President now said it's time for France to embrace Nigeria, the signals again came from northern Nigeria that you cannot bring France to come and exploit the solid minerals in the north, which is currently being exploited by the government, northern governors, and big-time private citizens, including gold. And they sell these things, various mineral resources, and they don't remit to the Federation account. So it's a very big problem. And to add to that, when the French German president came to Nigeria, I think that was just last week. One of the vocal issues discussed was on ECOWAS. And I felt bad that we have power problem, and we know Germany as a country that has the technology to help us. Why not make that an issue? Why make the issue of ECOWAS and how democracy is to be entrenched in those countries that are under military rule? I saw that as a very wrong move, very unfortunate statement, because it holds no relevance. For one, what is democracy? And what is military coup? There is what is called civilian coup. Any election that is rigged is a coup. So it's not just military coup. Anybody that gets into public office without the vote of the people determining access to office is a coup plotter. I use a term that is something called guardian coup. A guardian coup is meant to help rescue people who are under very terrible form of rule. It's a coup. And that kind of coup is what has happened in Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. And the citizens are rejoicing. We saw them on the streets. And we are seeing what a 36-year-old Faye is doing in Burkina Faso. Industries are springing up. Agriculture is taking a new dimension completely. Even terrorism that has been the bane of that country is being dealt with. 36-year-old. And his people are very happy. So it's not just enough for speech writers to just put things that sound like poem and then it is read. What is happening on ground is different from what is actually said. The worst thing that is happening now, you also raised it, fantastic idea, has to do with the neo-colonial arrangements. It is not just countries that are trying to scramble for Africa. The economic, the financial powerhouses, World Bank, IMF, and some individuals that are so powerful that they determine the type of crop you are to plant. These GMOs that you cannot plant this year and use the seed to plant again. You have to depend on buying seedlings every planting season. That is against even nature itself, because you cannot expect our mothers, our fathers, our grannies in the village who rely on just putting seeds to the ground and knowing that definitely harvest will come. But these seeds that are being given by people who want to colonize Africa is that you can never replant the seed, the seedling from whatever, if it even produces a seed. You can't. If it grows, it cannot even yield. And even the soil itself will become poisoned over time. We should be more worried about that level of colonialism, because all our monies will be going back to where they are giving loans and giving conditions. We've seen videos of some of what they call agents who have come to reveal what they do to countries, the conditions they give. And if you don't accept these conditions, you are either taken out by what they call jackals, or you find it very impossible to rule. So it's not the time that ECOWAS or even AU should be talking about writing essays that has no bearing with reality. Where we are so far, I've said so earlier, is a clear proof that we do not have leadership. And until we accept our problems, until we are able to even define reality, we will never be able to get out of it. So, not just ECOWAS, the entire Africa, the scramble is real. It's not just from former colonial masters. It is from institutions that these countries depend, particularly Nigeria. We are owing so much. And one of them told us recently, we are ready to give you more money, whatever money you need. And you see the trillions we are used to pay. We are currently paying possibly close to 100%. At the point, it was more than 100% of whatever is our earnings. So we borrow money to service debt, not even to repay. What worst thing can ever happen to a people? Okay. And the worst is that we don't seem to be thinking. And the community opinion leaders are not helping matters. Talk less of the civil society, who should come out very loud and clear to say, we can't, enough is enough. This should mark the bus stop.
Okay, let's talk about the leadership conversation that you've thrown up. One of the reasons why the three countries have also decided to leave is traced down to the lack of leadership within the African, the ECOWAS bloc. Now, leadership in the sense that as ECOWAS, when presidents of the countries within the bloc sit on their own and decide to amend the constitution to favor themselves at the detriment of true democratic principles and values and what good democracy should represent, the ECOWAS does not react or barely react. But when there is a military coup, then the ECOWAS will bring out all the muscles. And of course, during the session, those concerns were raised. Why do we sit as ECOWAS and we do not react to individual leaders in their respective countries who want to turn democracy into something else at the detriment of the people? Presidents who just wake up and want to amend the constitution to stay in power forever. So that goes down to the question of leadership. What would you advise the ECOWAS do in terms of that regard? Because if these concerns are ironed out within the leadership of ECOWAS, I like to believe that even Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso might consider, having a different consideration about leaving the bloc.
It's a clear thing, like I've said from beginning, from 1975, this is 2024, it's 59 years. By 2025,
49, he heading
it's
on
going
50.
to be 50 years. I have said, I have not seen tangible things we can look back and say, oh, thank God we had ECOWAS. Yes, there's the free movement, as has been said, but even that free movement has its own very serious issues because of terrorism. Remember when under President Buhari, former President Buhari, he declared visa on arrival for Fulanis across Africa. And when you know that we don't have borders, people moved in, and most of them are terrorists. And when you find the military taking action like it happened under the Jonathan administration, which was real action against the insurgents, some people who were interested in whatever role and whatever they wanted to protect will be saying, no, you are killing our people, northerners. And when some persons are caught, or when it gets so bad, for instance, during the Buhari time, they were not longer talking about, oh, government or military is killing northerners. It was, oh, these insurgents are not Nigerians. You find that issue, that the issue of free movement because of insurgency or terrorism is necessary. There should be a review of that. Now, to issue of democracy. Which country in Africa can we cite as a model in West Africa, as a model in the practice of democracy? Looking at how elections are conducted. Something happened very recently, and people were even laughing about it when we heard the INEC chairman.
Talking about Ghana, learning from our election proceedings.
I've refused. One of the few things I have not done, I've refused to even read it. Why? Because it sounded like a fake news, and I didn't want to waste my time on it. Even if it's not a fake news, it is an indictment. It is a pointer to the fact that some persons see Nigerians as being gullible. Some persons believe that citizens are unable to think, or they have been charmed by void. Like Mr. President made reference, commending the exiting Ghanaian president for a good election and a good outcome. Yeah, the incumbent ruling party lost to an opposition party. Would that have happened in Nigeria? Would that happen easily? Jonathan was used as a model, yes. But after Jonathan, didn't we have a situation where something will have happened and will have said, yes, Nigerians, we've gotten it right? These issues are not rocket science. A number of citizens have said they will never vote the rest of their lives because they don't believe vote counts. And this is Nigeria, that we are using Ghana election as a model. Yes, even Jonathan, that I think Jonathan was there as an observer, he gave kudos to Ghana for the kind of things that they did. So, but is Ghana learning from Nigeria? We cannot say Ghana is learning from Nigeria. If they are learning from Nigeria, that wouldn't have happened.
That wouldn't have been the result
Yeah, we
of
only
the
had
election.
a very rare case under Goodluck Jonathan, and there are clear issues over what even happened, that when the story, when books will be written about that era, people will now look at and say, thank God we never perished as a country. We cannot commend others for what we cannot do, and that's why I see this as a challenge, that our leaders should see what is happening as a challenge, that we cannot have leaders whose statements are actually different from reality.
From reality. Well, okay, something would land on is the fact that at the 66th ordinary session, ECOWAS has okayed the cessation of these three nations, but they have given them a timeline, a window till June of 2025 to decide, you know, once again, like you said earlier, it's a safe face kind of scenario, you know, to say, oh, yes, we are leaving and we are not coming back. There are lots of questions as to what Mali, you know, Burkina Faso and Niger cessation means for ECOWAS, especially with regards to security. When you look at the West African coastline, Nigeria now becomes a strong partner in that. And it is Niger that has a very, you know, key geostrategic play where the security architecture of the region is. So what do you think that this cessation means for, you know, ECOWAS, as it were, especially in the fight against terrorism?
It's quite challenging. You quoted me right. That time, extra time given, is just face-saving. What the 66th summit of ECOWAS actually achieved was the fact that Mr. President had to pay off Nigeria's...
the 85 billion backlog.
And $45 million. That is whopping. And they actually admitted that for almost 17 years or more,
19.
Nigerians have never paid out. You see, they are, not that we've not been paying. The bad thing there is that we've not seen what other countries are paying or have paid. So the achievement is that they have so much money in their purse, and some persons are going to be rich, not even the sub-region. It is their only gain. And what does that benefit the people? Now, Niger is very strategic to Nigeria. The border, I think it borders about a number of states, not just Katsina, a number of states up north. And when you look at the insecurity issue and the fact that the man there is very firm on terrorists, you'll find that most of those terrorists who will have had their, plied their trade there may end up making more inroads into the country. So what has happened is not the best. And to have virtually in one region, West Africa, you have countries belong to 3 different blocks. Mauritania belongs to another block. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger belong to another block they created, just the 3 of them. And they have the landmass. Mind you, the cattle that we eat in this part of the world, Nigeria, are not reared in Nigeria. Those cattle are mostly from Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. So if something is not done in the area of agriculture, in the area of raising our cattle, we are going to have serious problems.
There's onions from Niger also.
A lot. Their landmass, Nigeria is a toy when you look at the landmass of those countries and their potential, and the fact that they are trying to check corruption. Where you have a leader who would rather buy farm tools than buy private jet or luxury yacht or luxury buildings everywhere, as if, you know, the kind of things that some persons who are into a particular form of business do.
Like the likes of Assad.
You know, there are palaces everywhere. You go to have presidential palaces and all of that. Those young men are not interested in all of that. That they are going to likely bring in a new form of leadership to Nigeria, and that wouldn't be the best for other West African countries, because By the time their citizens now see that, look at Mali, look at Niger. So what are we doing? So those that say that the worst military civilian government is better than the best military, those are statements that were made by very corrupt politicians who wants to remain where they are, not offering any form of leadership, but to loot. If we are getting result from young military officers in this country, it is a threat to other countries who believe in sit-tight system. And it is an indictment on them. That's why people like that have nothing to say in public domain. In fact, anytime they speak, people just look at them and said, well, it's just wasting time because we are far beyond that. So we are in a very big challenge, because if nothing is done for us to be able to come together again, like the ECO, which was the West African sub-regional currency that so many years ago was like something was going to be visible, and along the line, I think it died a natural death. If we do not have something that can bind us together, help us mostly to check terrorism, we'll be in trouble. And we need a leader to emerge in West Africa to be able to give that very leadership. Otherwise, this conversation, we are going to look at it and then we are going to sweat while discussing it, and that is what we must avoid.
There's a lot of things to avoid, but I think we're out of breath at this point. But looking at what, the Nigerian coup leader, as it were, is doing, there's a revolution in leadership that they're bringing on. They're already, in the last 1 year, bringing in a lot of gains that they have had under this, quote-unquote transition government back to what they now want to define as democracy. So, but like you said, there's going to be a lot for the rest of Africa to be learning from these three nations, depending on how they keep interpreting what's on their table. But let's see what happens in the next 6 months that ECOWAS is given to them. Is ECOWAS willing to put in work strong enough to make them to reconsider their cessation from the bloc? Or, like you said, they're just going to watch face, and after June, all of us agree that we are 12 members on the ECOWAS. Yeah.
And maybe look for a name change.
Oh, name change, yeah, you establish that. It's no longer Economic Community of West African States. You need to look for what it is. Thank you so much, Citizen Matthew O'Connor, for coming on the show this morning, giving perspective, to what's happening regionally on the block. Been a great conversation this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, Francis.
Well, it's the size of the package, and we enjoyed your company. We do hope you join us tomorrow, same time, same station. Do enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, then. Bye-bye for now.